I first came across Kieran Gillen's insightful and brilliant 5-page analysis of the atmospheric Robbing the Cradle level from Thief Deadly Shadows nearly a decade ago. Since then, it has enabled me to play more games and pay deep attention and appreciation to the aesthetics and details of level design. Robbing the Cradle is considered one of the scariest levels in video games. In a game where stealth and steampunk is king, this level comes out of nowhere and completely catches the player off guard with what its survival horror feel, jump scares, and tense atmosphere. The level quickly became a fine example of excellent level design, and one of its primary designers, Jordan Thomas, went on to create the equally unforgettable Fort Frolic chapter from BioShock. The catalyst for my Level Up series, Ravenholm was the first entry I wrote and served as a direct response to Gillen's opinion that Robbing the Cradle was probably the scariest level ever made. I looked into and seriously considered the Dunwich building from Fallout 3, Deliverance from Manhunt, and the library chapter from Metro 2033, before settling on the contemporaneous Half-Life 2, for want of better analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, that includes you too, Mr. Gillen. Welcome to Ravenholm. The first gruesome sight that awaits you in the hellish town is a half-mutilated body hanging from a tree. Underneath the corpse is a zombie. A few steps into the town, and a fast zombie makes its first appearance on a distant rooftop. The nightmarish screams that tear through the night are mightily unsettling, to say the least. As their name suggests, these are extremely fast and agile, being able to jump great distances and inflict serious damage. At this point into the game, players have seen just about everything: claustrophobic hallways, dilapidated buildings, alien and domestic threats, and tense moments. What's different about Ravenholm is that it nullifies the fight or flight feel of the other chapters, where one can get around without killing 100% of the enemies. Here, the player is hard-pressed to take out every shuffling zombie and jumping headcrab due to the very vintage horror vibe it produces, and the irrational fear it injects into the player. While Ravenholm does indeed haunt the player after they're done with it, another thing that will linger over them like thick fog is the unresolved fate of perhaps the most resilient and greatest character of the series, after the mute hero himself, of course. Father Grigori, a preacher with a shotgun, philosophical, deranged, Ravenholm's only human occupant. He enjoys killing zombies and generally puts on a strangely pecoccurant demeanor when confronting them, a clear contrast to that of the mindset of the player whose first instinct is to run amok and shoot wildly. Father Grigori explodes into the screen very early into the level via religious imagery that is hard to miss, silhouetted against bright golden light in an open window. His timing is immaculate, as you're suddenly cornered by a horde of burning zombies and, of course, raging fire. The game wastes no time in displaying his marksmanship and amiable, if rather eccentric, nature. He quickly takes on the role of a fairy godparent to the player. Throughout the level, Father Grigori keeps you well stocked with ammo and weapons, all the while offering wise advice and rambling, eccentric dialogue that makes you question the man's sanity. Voice actor Jim French did a stellar job in breathing Father Grigori to life.
I am Father Grigori. You have already met my congregation.
And truly elevates the character's status from that of initially interesting to genuinely memorable. In fact, so powerfully, the character connects to the player that his dramatic exit, which also marks the end of the chapter, leaves a profound and everlasting effect, and makes one wonder just how cool it would be if Valve or Gearbox, who developed the excellent expansion packs for the original Half-Life, were to create an episode where you get to play as Father Grigori. I say if you're not going to make Half-Life 3, then at least alleviate our suffering with Half-Life Annabelle. For those who are in need to know, Annabelle is the name of the rifle used by Father Grigori. The genius of Ravenholm is in how it masterfully embeds what is essentially an elaborate gravity gun tutorial within the gameplay in a chapter that, though feeling otherworldly, blends within the established context of Half-Life 2. The numerous buzzsaws and booby traps that are to be found in every crook and nanny of the town are justified by the developers as the work of Father Grigori. Sharp players may see through this facade, but even if this weren't the case, Ravenholm remains one of the greatest horror levels, and a strong tutorial sequence that is times scarier and effective than any danger room simulation the X-Men have ever gone through. One could argue that the opening 50% or so of Portal, basically one giant tutorial exercise in disguise, is perhaps the best example of the so-called invisible tutorial. Half-Life 2's edge is that it did it first.